Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Living on the Verge. How's everybody doing? I hope that you are doing well. I have had a busy week, but in the most beautiful way. And I just wanted to jump on here for a few minutes and kind of share my week as I normally do, but also just talk a little bit about the Easter season that is kind of coming to an end here, with the climax being Easter Sunday, this upcoming Sunday. So if you're listening to this in real time, today is Good Friday, and this is not a religious podcast, nor am I going to go on any real long tangent about religion, but I just thought it would be kind of a neat opportunity, since I am in the middle of preparing my grandson for his sacraments on Saturday as his godmother and sponsor, to kind of talk a little bit about what these few days leading up to Easter all mean, because they're really important. And in the Catholic Church, they're referred to as the Holy Triduum, and they began yesterday on Holy Thursday. And essentially, Holy Thursday's Mass is for purposes of reenacting the Last Supper and the act of Jesus washing the disciples' feet to indoctrinate them and make them priests to carry on his word, because he knew he was going to die. And so today, being Good Friday, is the day that we celebrate or observe the Passion of Christ. And this is all the way up into his crucifixion. And then Saturday is considered the Easter Vigil, which is where we are waiting for the resurrection. And so the Easter Vigil will be where my grandson will receive the sacrament of baptism. He will receive his first Holy Communion, and he will be confirmed. And that is because it is the rebirth of the church, and the Easter Vigil ends leading us up into Easter Sunday. And so these 3 days are very much days of reverence and of deep thought. And it also serves as a reminder for those of us who already know, but as a lesson to those who are seeking more knowledge of exactly why we believe what we believe. Because this is the time of year that explains it the best way I could understand it. And so if you are celebrating Easter this weekend with your family, I wish you all the happiness. I hope you all have a fantastic Easter Sunday. And whatever your beliefs are, whatever your thoughts are, I just hope that you lean into them. And I always say everybody needs something, so I don't judge what faith you choose. I've chosen Catholicism, and it serves me well. But that's my spiel about Easter, because I just thought I would share with you why. I had mentioned earlier in the week that I was going to be in church most of the week. Well, we started off on Wednesday with the rehearsal for the actual ceremony that we're having on Saturday night. So that was Wednesday, and then Holy Thursday. I'll be back there for Good Friday in a little while. And then tomorrow, being Holy Saturday, will be the big sacrament reception for Ethan, and then we will have a big party on Sunday and celebrate. So it's just going to be a beautiful weekend, and this is kind of what's been taking up all sorts of space in my mind and in my life too, because I have my son coming in with his new girlfriend. He'll be here in a little while, and I'm very excited. I haven't seen him since Christmas, and this may be the longest span of time we've had that we've gone without seeing one another since he left home over 5 years ago. So this is a really exciting time for me in a lot of ways, but it's also busy, right? I'm trying to get the house clean. And we talked about how I no longer push myself to get the house in tip-top shape. I just try to do the best I can. I clear surfaces. I make sure that the floors are clean. I want it to look welcoming and yet comfortable. And I don't want people walking into a museum like place, especially with kids and especially for an Easter party. So we're going to have the classic Easter egg hunt. And then because it's also a 10th birthday party for Ethan, we are going to have some other games and prizes. And I got these little goodies together for them, which I'm really excited for. And I just think it's going to be really fun. Of course, the grandkids' Easter bags are ready. And I had a fourth bag to make this year with glee and joy as I put together baby Ezra's bag. It was so awesome. I have 4 grandbabies now. It's so cool. Anyway, so everything is going really well. We are going to be doing a taco bar. So we're doing carne asada and pollo asado tacos. And my gosh, you guys, the cost of everything is so out of control, especially here in Southern California. I don't know where you're listening, but I'm sure you've noticed some sticker shock wherever you are as well. However, here in SoCal, carne asada that is already prepared and ready to be grilled at my meat market is $19 a pound. That is absolutely ridiculous. And so I found the choice skirt steak at Costco for $12.99 a pound. And, it doesn't seem like it's a big difference, but it does when you're buying 15 or 20 pounds of meat. And then we found the marinade that all the carnicerias use because they told us so. And it's called Chef Merito Marinade, Merito. I found it at Winco, but most grocery stores have it. And all you do is go buy your meat at Costco the day before, throw it in the marinade, add some sliced onions, some cilantro, and shove it in the fridge and let it marinate overnight. And you just saved yourself $7 a pound, and you have a choice quality meat, which, to be fair, even though the meat market that I use has really good meat, I don't know if it's USDA choice, right? So that's my tip when it comes to saving a little bit money on large quantities of carne asada for a taco bar like we're doing, or just in general. If you don't want to be paying the ridiculous prices, always check at Costco, because for a little bit more work, you can probably save a good chunk of money. We're going to save almost $100 just by making this switch. And I had a really good dinner party last week. I may have mentioned it, and the food was delicious, but I ended up having an allergic reaction to shrimp. And I go in and out of being allergic to shrimp, and darn it, I'm allergic to it again, which kind of bums me out, because I was kind of looking forward to making aguachiles de camarón, which is, aguachiles means chili water. And essentially it is a cold cook method, kind of like ceviche, in that you take raw shrimp and you make a sauce out of chili and lime and a little bit of the juice, and you let it marinate, and that in and of itself cooks the shrimp, and it's delicious. You serve it with onions and on a tostada, and I always love having aguachiles when I do a taco bar. I kind of use that as an appetizer. But I'm not even going to tempt myself this time, because I don't think I need to have shrimp around me. It was not a fun reaction. Thank goodness for Benadryl. And doggone it, I really like shrimp. Like every 3 or 4 years, I'll try it again. And if I don't have a reaction, then suddenly I start eating it again until I have a reaction again. But there's something interesting that I'm starting to discover. I remember the last time I had a reaction, it was under the same circumstances, in that I had reheated shrimp that was left over. And this time, the exact same thing happened. I made these chile relleno gobernadores, which is shrimp in a cream sauce with cheese, and you stuff them in your chile. And that's what I had made for the dinner party. And there was leftovers. And so I reheated one for lunch the next day. And within an hour, I had welts all over my face. So maybe I'm not really allergic to shrimp as much as I'm allergic to leftover shrimp, or maybe it's something in the microwave process. I don't know. For now, I'm just going to stay away from shrimp, but knowing me, eventually I'm going to do a little more research so that I can get back to it because I love that darn little crustacean. And so, speaking of food and delicious food at that, I told you that I was going to spring tasting for Europa Winery and Bolero, their Spanish restaurant's new spring menu. So, as a member of the Europa table, which is their food, I guess, cooking box that they sell, you get a pretty deep discount when you go to the to the menu tastings that Chef Hani puts on for the Europa table members. And it's open to the general public as well, but it costs a little bit more. And so the spring menu, I will post the beautiful pictures of the plated food. Let me tell you a little bit about how it works. So it was up in the hall at the Vienza part of the winery in Europa. And you stand in line and then the doors open. In this case, we were greeted with a glass of champagne. Sometimes you get a ticket for a glass of wine. They always have a little bar set up in the corner so that you can go ahead and purchase wine if you'd like. And so we brought in a couple of bottles of wine, which I was told by some was frowned upon, but then I was told by others it was okay. So you might want to call ahead and ask if it's okay. I know for a fact that if you're having dinner at Bolero and you bring in Europa wine, that they will uncork it for you at no charge. But I don't know that you're allowed to bring unopened bottles of wine into their events. So double check me on that one. Anyway, somehow, some way, people at our table definitely brought in bottles of wine, and beautiful bottles at that. There were 10 of us sitting at our table, and I would say there were 8 bottles of open wine and maybe 1 or 2 bottles of bubbly. So there was plenty of vino flowing around that evening. Not so much for me because I was driving, but it was a lovely evening. And the bonus was that my husband never gets to go to these events with me because they're usually during the week and he's working. But this time he was off and he was able to go. And it was great because all of our friends are couple friends and all of my friends' husbands really missed him. So it was really cool to see him get to enjoy himself and spend time with his friends and kind of get to experience all of the cool things that I get to experience. And so as we walked in, there's a guy playing guitar and he's playing some really cool music. It was a really nice little vibe. We quickly got seated at our tables, popped open some wine, and then I promptly jumped up to beat the rush. And this was my first time at a tasting of any sort, but this was the spring tasting menu. And this was my first time at one of these, but I just really wanted to see how the food was plated because it's a tasting, so we don't get full portions. However, they do have the full portions displayed in the same way they would be served if you ordered them at the restaurant. And they had about, I think it was 11 dishes displayed, and we tasted 7 of those. So you didn't get to taste every single thing, but it was a very nice sampling. And I'm going to post some of the pictures that I took on my Instagram, and I'd love for you guys to, share them with a friend or chime in and tell me about your experience. Have you had lunch or dinner at Bolero? What was your experience like? Tell me all about it. But for now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the spring menu. So On our tasting menu, we had churrasco steak and chorizo, which was grilled beef and Iberico smoked sausage skewers with shoestring potatoes in a guajillo aioli. And I liked that dish okay enough. And maybe in a full portion, it would not read this way, but we had kind of bite-sized little portions, and there was a lot of fat in my portion, and it kind of took away from the loveliness of what they were trying to convey in the plating, in the dish itself. And the shoestring potatoes were cute. I try to stay away from a lot of carbs, so I would probably sub that out with some roasted vegetables if I was having this at the restaurant, but the guajillo aioli was delicious. And I'm going to try something similar to that the next time I do a tri-tip, because I think it'll be lovely with the tri-tip. And then there was a tapas style plate called berinena. And it is composed of roasted eggplant and chickpea puree, marinated olives, a little stack of blistered shishito, and then a toasted pan cristal. So the plated version looks absolutely gorgeous. It's definitely tapas and shareable. And I really enjoyed this, and I like eggplant. Now, a couple of the people at my table are not eggplant connoisseurs. However, connoisseurs might be a strong word. Let's just say they don't really care for eggplant. However, one of the two people said this was the best eggplant they had ever tasted. So that's kind of an endorsement, right? As for me, I thought this was delicious. I think I would order something different if I was at the restaurant, just because there are other options that appeal to me more. But this would be fun to pick at while sitting maybe in one of the tasting rooms. And funny story, I said that there had to be a gazpacho. We had gone to have dinner at Bolero a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted a soup, but the soups were really hearty. Obviously, their winter menu. So there was like a squash soup, like a butternut squash soup, and then there was another bean soup. And I made the comment, gosh, I really hope they have a gazpacho on the spring menu. That would be a really good idea. Cha-ching! Lo and behold, there is a Blanco gazpacho on the menu. It is a chilled white soup with pears, Marcona almonds, garlic, extra virgin chili oil. And it is absolutely beautiful. The plating is gorgeous. And I think that this was a really lovely soup. I think it could use a teeny bit less sweetness, but other than that, it was fantastic. Refreshing, light, but still a gazpacho. The next thing we tried was an ensalada de burrata. Now listen, I love burrata cheese, so this was a big hit for me. It had burrata cheese, oranges, heirloom tomatoes, chia seed, and a passion fruit vinaigrette. It was really lovely. I think mine had a blood orange and then another orange. The orange that seemed more like a caracara orange was delicious and sweet. The blood orange was very bitter. And I think that that's kind of what they were going for. But for me, I could have done without the blood orange. And that was my only negative. Other than that, I loved this. And this is one I would definitely order while having a glass of wine in the tasting room. And I'd also order it as a tapas option before dinner. One of the big hits of the evening was the crujienta melt. And that is a crispy brioche bread, aged manchego, and caramelized apple with a smoked tomato bisque. everybody was kind of referring to it as an adult style grilled cheese and tomato soup because that's exactly what it was a play on. And Chef Hani tells a story of when he was young and first out on his own, and it was kind of the only thing he could afford was a grilled cheese. So he stuck an apple in it. And ever since then, it's been something that he kind of goes to when he wants a lovely snack. It was really good. I would do this for lunch, probably with a Caesar salad, maybe the organized Caesar, which I'm told is staying on the menu in case you're wondering. And the pot pie espagnole. Now, the plated version of this looks absolutely gorgeous. It has a bone marrow sticking out of the top crust. It's very dramatic as far as presentation. But what this consists of is lobster, filet mignon, and vegetables with roasted bone marrow in a sherry cream sauce, a buttery crust, and a pickled watermelon, radish, and arugula salad. Now, this was a nice tasting plate. I think because we got little mini ones, the proportions were a little bit off and mine had a lot of vegetables, but taste-wise, it was very nice. I thought that it missed something tangy, and so I was very happy to see that it does come with the pickled watermelon, radish, and arugula salad when plated in the restaurant. We just did not get that when we tasted it at the tasting, and I think it could have done with something a little bit tangy to offset all the richness, but it was delicious, and I can see myself ordering that as an entree. One of the big, huge hits of the evening was the snapper rojo, and that was pan-fried whitefish fillet with blistered shishitos, char-grilled corn, piquillo relish, ají amarillo, and a citrus emulsion. And it was lightly battered, which is something that, most people nowadays are kind of frowning upon. You're trying to kind of err on the side of grilled versus fried whenever possible. And not all of us. And sometimes we want the indulgence, right? But what I really loved about this was the batter did not take over the taste of the fish. And let's face it, any white fish is very mild in flavor, so a thick batter is kind of take over, right? This did not do that at all, and it did not feel heavily fried at all. This is a win for me as far as the tasting in general. This probably was my favorite plate that was served that evening, and I honestly had a fantastic time, not just, tasting, but just the fellowship and the camaraderie, hanging out with other couples, chatting about food and wine. What could be better? And I had a little chat with Chef Hani. He says he's still coming on the podcast, so I'm going to hold him to that, you guys. I'll post a picture of us on Instagram, and I told him I would do that so that people would know that he's on the hook. He thought that was really funny. No, he said he'd come on anytime. We just need to make the time to do so. And I will be doing that, hopefully in short order, because I do have some guests lined up that have committed to come on the podcast. A couple of winery owners, a sommelier, a chef, and a couple of friends that I have from the Innocence Center have still expressed an interest to come on the podcast. So we'll see if we can't bring you some interviews over the spring and summer. And I just think it's going to be a fantastic spring and summer. Things are shaping up. Although this week in Southern California, interestingly enough, as soon as the first day of spring hit, it got cold. But I already told you my theory on that, and it looks like it's going to play out this year. It's been kind of gloomy and chilly and icky all week, but we're supposed to have gorgeous 85-degree weather for Easter Sunday. And so after all of the craziness of this week, things should be back to normal here on the podcast starting next week. Before I close, I'm just going to tell you that I did listen to the reunion for the Age of Attraction documentary that I told you about on the last recap or reality update, I guess we can call it. I'm about to spoil, so if you haven't seen the season and you don't want to know how things are in current day, you might want to skip ahead. I'm only going to spend about 30 seconds on this, but it turns out that the only couple still together is Vanessa and Logan. They're still engaged. They are happy. They're planning on getting married, and they even invited originally they invited Jorge to officiate their wedding, and then Nick and his wife got a little bit jelly, and so they kind of mentioned the possibility of Nick and Natalie officiating their wedding. So anyway, they are the only ones. The other couple, Teresa and John, they had kind of a nasty breakup, and John, I'm not going to mince any words here, kind of acted like an asshole on the entire reunion and was completely different than the endearing guy that I really liked, and I'm sure most of us all fell in love with during the season. So I don't know what that was all about, but the good news is this show is getting a season 2, and I'm here for it. I thought it was a cool experience and a good experiment, and I would like to see more. So that was Age of Attraction. And I also watched The Valley season 3, the first episode. Fantastic. And I'm not recapping anything, but I am going to say one thing. I'm so happy Lala's back, and I love Tom Schwartz. So anytime I get an opportunity to see him back on our screen, it's a happy moment. He's just quirky. He's a real guy. And it seems like he might be doing a little bit of growing up this season on The Valley. So yay for The Valley. I hope they continue to have a good season. But it really was a really refreshing and fun first episode, if you ask me. And it was immediately followed by the debut episode of The Real Housewives of Rhode Island. And I'm going to be honest, I have to rewatch this one. There are a lot of different personalities, and none of the names have stuck yet, but I do see that my girl Dolores Catania is a friend of, with a pretty big presence, at least in the first episode. And so I'm going to rewatch, and then I'll let you know how I feel about it. But honestly, the feel it gave me was a more affluent version of the New Jersey style. And that's my takeaway with that one so far. And you guys, with that, I'm done for this week. That's it. It's time for me to get back to my Easter crafts and my egg stuffing. And I got to get ready to go to Good Friday services, and then I've got to go do all of my shopping for the party, and when I get back, my son will be here. I just can't wait to see him. As I said, things should return a little bit closer to normal next week, whatever normal is for me. I wish you and yours the most beautiful Easter. I'll be back next week, and until then, I'll be right here living on the verge. Bye.